Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. We're back at it for another edition of a game preview. This week, it is Iowa versus Minnesota. Crazy enough, but we are already here. It is now officially Big Ten play. Of course, sometimes it is literally the first game of the season or the second game of the season that Big Ten play starts. But usually, I would say traditionally, it is 3 games into the year. Man, we're already here. What I'm going to do this time is officially kind of give my assessment as we enter in Big Ten play of Iowa football, offense, defense, and special teams. Although in different iterations of this channel, in various other videos, I've already talked about it, but I'm going to be officially doing it within this video. If you are a Minnesota fan, obviously I am an Iowa Hawkeye fan. You guys can see here. But as I always say, I try to be as fair in my analysis and factual with regards to both teams, especially when it comes to the stats and the breaking down of that information, the line, and giving out information like that. If you're looking for a purely analyzation of Minnesota football coming into this, I'm sure there's other channels for that, but it might be interesting to see this coming from an Iowa Hawkeye fan. If you guys are not subscribed, I hope you guys consider smashing that subscribe button. At the very least, like, comment. The more comments that you guys have, the more likes it helps within the algorithm on YouTube in promoting said video out to the masses. And without further ado, let's get into this. So let's start with everybody's favorite, which is, of course, the Iowa offense. I feel like in one way, shape, or form, I've talked about the Iowa offense for so long now in many different manners and after losses, after wins. But this year, it definitely is unique with the emergence of Tim Lester and things of that nature. A new offense coordinator brings new storylines. So let me start here. Let me start with the positives. I said this in the post-game video for Iowa versus Troy, but I was correct. I said that Iowa's run game would be improved. If you look across the Iowa offensive line, it is laden with veterans, guys who have seen numerous Big Ten, NCAA Division I snaps, and they are well-versed. They have a ton of experience. The one thing that this Iowa offensive line is missing and still looks to be missing at this point is a alpha, Tyler Linderbaum, a Tristan Wirfs. Now, ultimately, I would rather have a solid offensive line of guys without an alpha, as long as the offensive line is solid as a whole, than have a below average, inconsistent offensive line with one alpha. But there's still plenty of time left to see that emerge. The one thing that this Iowa offensive line has struggled with, and part of it is due to Iowa not being with the times in having a super mobile quarterback. Not that Cade McNamara is the most or the slowest quarterback that Iowa has ever had, or less athletic quarterback that Iowa has ever had, but he is no Lamar Jackson, although very few people are. If I were to grade him on his elusivity, I would say in his ability to get out of the pocket, I would say he's a little bit, just a little bit, a wee bit above average. But Iowa has given up a decent amount of sacks in pass pro, and that needs to be cleaned up, especially as Iowa enters into Big Ten play. But as far as the run game goes, Iowa has been superb, namely Caleb Johnson, although we've seen spurts from Kamari Moulton and from Josiah Patterson most recently. It is kind of crazy, though, that Iowa Iowa's leading rusher last year, LaShawn Williams, has been so quiet. It's hard to really assess that, as unfortunately he was nicked up for a majority of the offseason, and all reports indicate that he's still bouncing back from his injury. But unfortunately, Iowa and most teams go with whoever has the hot hand. And right now, Caleb Johnson has the hot hand. He is the leading rusher in the entire country, in rushing yards. He is, if he keeps running like this, he is well on his way to being a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, which goes to the nation's top running back. So that has been good to see. And as I have said, and many people have said for a long time, Caleb Johnson is the one Iowa running back that looks like an NFL running back. I mean, there are other guys that have, it's not like they're nothing or anything like that. But Caleb Johnson, when you look at him physically, he does look like he should be the starting running back. I mean, the guy is built like a brick, you know what? And finally, he is running like that. Year one, he had a solid freshman campaign. He took a step back in year two. As I said, LaShawn Williams was the leading rusher for Iowa. So hopefully, as Big Ten play is resumed, he can continue running the football in that manner. Now, the negative to, and I already kind of said one of the negatives in the pass protection, is Iowa's passing game as a whole. I wouldn't say that it's as bad as it was last year. In spurts, it has been better. But if you look at every game outside of Illinois State, in which it was primarily just one half of football, the passing game has left a lot to be desired. I don't know what has happened to Reese Vanderzee. I don't know why Iowa is not trying to thread the needle to its number one tight end in Luke Lachey, and get him as many targets as possible, who is one of the best tight ends in the entire country. I hope as Big Ten play emerges that Caleb Brown will have more targets thrown his way, as he is the most explosive wide receiver that Iowa has, although Jacob Gill has made a case of his own to be that guy. Seth Anderson is virtually non-existent at this point, although I believe he has injuries, much in the same vein as LaShawn Williams. But at this point, if I were to grade Iowa's passing attack from all three games, I would say that it's a C+. Okay. It is average. At times it's been above average. At times it's been below average, which is why I give it a solid rating of average. It can improve. I think Iowa has the weapons to do so. And especially if this run game is able to continuously run the football this way, there will be opportunities for Iowa to make it happen through the air. Now, of the two, I would rather Iowa have a solid run game than a pass game. But still, if you were to tell me that Iowa would have been this successful, like guaranteed running the football, I would think that they would be a little bit better than they have been passing the football. So they're offensively, as a whole, I would say Iowa has taken some steps forward. It's definitely better than it's been last year. And I'll get to the stats and the total offense and scoring offense here later in this episode. But there is still definitely room for improvement. Next, Iowa's defense. It hasn't been terrible by any means, but it has not been as good as I expected either. In the passing game, Iowa has allowed some big plays. They've allowed wide receivers to run roughshod all over the secondary. And this is one of the drawbacks to Phil Parker's defense. I've said this time and time again. If you want to be delusional and not admit this, it is what it is. But the one drawback that Phil Parker's defense has, and it could be due to the scheme, Iowa playing zone, and having a bend, don't break philosophy, whatever the case may be, Iowa tends to get burnt by above average to elite wide receivers. We saw that against Troy, where one wide receiver burned the Iowa secondary twice for 60-plus yard gainers. And we saw it against Iowa State with their wide receiver totally torching the Iowa Hawkeyes. As I'm pulling up the stats here on my iPad, Iowa allowed Jalen Noel to have 5 receptions for 133 yards. And then against Troy, Iowa allowed Devontae Ross 5 receptions for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. That needs to be fixed with a quickness. The positive to Iowa's defense has been their pass rush. Their defensive line is really far along, probably much more so than a lot of people expected. I thought that their defensive line was going to be just fine. I knew that they had the workhorses up front to make it happen. They just did not have the established talent to make a definitive prognostication on it. But they definitely have the guys, Aaron Graves, the talent, Y.A. Black, Deontay Craig, Ethan Herkett, Brian Allen is emerging. They have a lot of talent. So the defense, I would give them a B, B+. They can improve and they can really make things happen. But I was expecting this defense to be one of the best Phil Parker defenses in his entire tenure. There's still a lot of time left. That's the good news. Lastly, Iowa special teams. The kicking game has been good. Perfect, really. Drew Stevens, I don't think he's missed a field goal yet. That's good. I think Reese Dakin has had moments of looking to be the punter that hopefully he can be. He's not where Tory Taylor is, obviously. I said in a Facebook post that really in year one, all that I'm expecting for Reese Dakin is, aka Reese Dakin, is for him to have an average of 40 yards, 40 to 43 yards a punt. If he can be somewhere in there, I would consider it a successful year one. Obviously, Iowa needs to improve in its coverage, but I do have confidence that's a relatively easy fix. And I'm sure LeVar Woods, who is one of the best special teams coordinators in the entire country, I am sure that he is going to get it right, get it down pat, and get the guys who needs to be in there. Caden Wedgson had a muff punt against Troy. That's a tough one because you want your punt and kick returner to be fearless because that's what it takes to be successful. But at the same time, if that fearlessness is causing your team to be negatively impacted overall, then that's a problem. As a punt or a kick return specialist, you want your production to be more positive than it is negative. Resoundingly. I would say overall at this point, it has been for Caden Wedgson, but we cannot have much more muff punts moving forward. All right, guys, let's take a look at Iowa versus Minnesota here. Here is ESPN Football Power Index. They give Iowa a 50.4% chance to win this game. I believe this game is on the road for the Iowa Hawkeyes. It's at Minnesota. It's on NBC, 4:30 p.m. Cade McNamara is 53 of 83 for 526 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 INTs. Really what I'm hoping for Iowa's starting quarterback is, I would say at minimum 15 passing touchdowns and no more than 6 interceptions for the season. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Anything more than 15 passing touchdowns, I would consider a success. And then passing yards, I would say the 2,000 yard is the mark. And I know for a lot of teams that's nothing, but for Iowa, I think 2,000 would be considered a success and an improvement from last year. Starting quarterback for Minnesota is Brosmer, who has 627 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. Very similar numbers to Cade McNamara. Caleb Johnson, 479 yards, 6 tubs. Darius Taylor has 188 yards, 3 touchdowns. The leading receiver for Iowa is Jacob Gill with 137 yards, 12 receptions. And Daniel Jackson is the leading receiver for Minnesota, 12 receptions, 156 yards. Here are the last 3 games for each team. Iowa, of course, defeated Illinois State. They lost to Iowa State. They beat Troy. Minnesota, they lost season opener to North Carolina 19-17, who is now 3-0 for what it's worth, although they haven't really played masterful competition outside of, well, Minnesota I wouldn't consider masterful, but they haven't played above average competition outside of Minnesota. Minnesota did beat Rhode Island and Nevada 48-0 and 27-0. And this is the weather. And then, of course, Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite. The over and under in this game is 36.5. All right, moving this along, we have the stats. As you guys can see here, Caleb Johnson is the leading rusher in the entire country, 479 yards. Let's look at total offense first, see where both these teams come in at. I believe Iowa is top 50, which is really solid. I mean, I said all they need to be is top 75, and that will be an improvement from last year. So again, I want to put it on the record. Iowa's offense has been better than it was last year. There are areas of improvement, red zone capitalization, actually turning the red zone trips into touchdowns, but the overall yards has been much improved. Iowa is 54th in total offense. I will take that. The passing offense needs to improve, but if this is where Iowa can stay all year long, I will consider it a success. Okay. Yards per play, 6.7 and 420.3 yards per game. Let's see if we can find Minnesota here. Minnesota is 97th, 5.69 yards per play and 350 yards per game. Let's take a look at scoring offense here. Scoring offense, see where both these two teams come in. Man, it would be awesome if Iowa could get onto page 1 for the first time in years, but they're close. They're 58th in scoring offense. They're averaging 32.3 points per game, which is well above what they were last year, which is very good. Credit where credit is due. Tim Lester is doing some good work. Again, there's room for improvement, and that is what I do. I shine light on those things, but I give credit where credit is due. I don't want to just, be negative Nancy on everything Iowa football. Minnesota, but a lot of that, again, has come from the run game and Caleb Johnson emerging as a lead back. Minnesota is 66th. They are averaging 30.7 points per game. All right, we have total defense here. Iowa is 29th. They are giving up 267 yards per game, 4.64 yards per play. Not bad, but I expected Iowa to be top 15 in all the major defensive categories. Let's see where Minnesota is at. I don't think they are page 1 here. Wisconsin is 51st. Let's see. Minnesota. Disregard. They are not only page 1, they are top 5 in total defense. They're only giving up 186 yards a contest. Wow. I am impressed. Nebraska, for what it's worth, is 23rd. Wow. I am pleasantly surprised by that number. Wow. Good for Minnesota. That's good. That means that this will be an excellent challenge for this Iowa offense. Minnesota is 5th in scoring defense. They're giving up 6.33 points per game. Nebraska is 8th. Iowa State 21st. and Iowa is 33rd, giving up 13.67 points per game. So there you guys have it. The last stat, I don't usually look at this stat, but because Iowa is doing pretty solid with this, I do want to highlight it. Iowa is tied for 21st in, let's see what the actual sacks. They have 9 sacks and 3 sacks per game. Nebraska is tied with them, Northwestern, Purdue. See where Minnesota, and Minnesota is 40th, tied for 40th with 7 sacks a game. Lastly, I'm going to show you guys the depth chart for Minnesota and Iowa quickly, and then you guys can pause it, and then I will give my final analysis at the end. All right, here is Minnesota's depth chart. Again, you guys can pause it and take a look at it. Here is their defense and special teams. And then we'll take a look at Iowa next. Here is Iowa's depth chart. I think and of course, this is not updated. I'm recording this as of Sunday. So Iowa and Minnesota's updated depth chart probably has not been released for their contest. But for Iowa, at right tackle, Nick DeYoung was getting some snaps. I don't know if that's because Jennings Dunkers was injured. I'll have to look more into that. But either way, I mean, Nick DeYoung has been at Iowa seemingly forever. And, he is plenty experienced. Here is the depth chart. It was good to see Max Llewellyn get a sack for Iowa. Physically, he looks good. And the defensive line continues to emerge. All right, guys, my final analysis for this game. This is going to be a tough one for Iowa. Not only is it a rivalry game, but I think Minnesota is better in a lot of regards than a lot of people expected. In my preseason predictions, I had Iowa winning this game 24-10. I now see this game likely to be closer. I agree with Vegas in their 2-point favorite for Iowa assessment. This is ultimately going to be a really good test of where Iowa's offense really is at. Once they play Minnesota, they will have played 2 Power 4 level opponents, and we'll see what is fool's gold and what is real. Can they continue to run the football? They were able to run the football just fine against Iowa State. Can they do so against a really, really stout or seemingly stout defense of Minnesota? Does the passing game take a step forward? I would say that Iowa, passing wise, the game was a little bit better against Troy, but it was effectively a similar game, just with a lesser opponent. I'm still going to pick Iowa to win this game. I think they have more talent. I think that the running game will take them over the edge. Iowa's defense, I think, will be much improved and up to the challenge of this game. But make no mistake, guys, Minnesota is going to want this one. They haven't defeated Iowa very much in the last, 10 years. They got the one last year, but again, Iowa will want this one back due to last year's loss at home to Minnesota, where had they won, they would have had 11 victories. And of course, everybody remembers the non-fair catch, the fair catch or not. And I, did plenty of videos on that, as I'm a sports official myself. So very interesting. They're going to be totally up to the task. I hope both teams will be ready to play, ready to rock. This is a rivalry game. So motivation should not be a factor in this game. I think I'm going to pick Iowa to win this game 25-20. I don't think that they're going to score over 30 points. I would love to see them do so, but because of where Minnesota's defense is at and where I see Iowa's offense at currently, I don't see them being able to get over 30. But honestly, if they can score 25 based on where Minnesota's defensive numbers are at, I think that will be impressive. That will be solid. So ultimately, Iowa's defense, special teams, taking steps forward, and Iowa's run game continuing to prevail and doing well, I think takes them over the edge. But I don't want Minnesota fans who watch this to think that I'm taking them lightly. I am very impressed by their statistical numbers, especially defensively. For them, they're kind of in a similar page or area as Iowa. I think Iowa is a little bit further along offensively than Minnesota, and I think Minnesota is a little bit further along defensively than Iowa. So, but they both are very similar teams. They come from the classic style Big Ten West, defending the football. You know what they're going to do offensively. Although, yes, with Tim Lester now under the helm for Iowa offensively, there's some added wrinkles. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited for this game. Iowa losing to Iowa State definitely took some of the wind out of the sails, but Big Ten play is fun, and watching rivalry games is also amazing. When you get to see two Big Ten level opponents, especially rivals, really going at it, the physicality, they're going to be running around the field, popping everywhere. It's going to be solid. So I'm picking Iowa to win this game 25-20. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this game preview. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, like, comment. You guys know the drill. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow on facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. I love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.